Hey everyone, welcome to my channel, Kindred Souls of Brooklyn and Sarasota. And with Hurricane Milton bearing down on us, in fact, you can listen outside this window. It's on its way. It should be here within 20 hours or so. I've been getting a common question on my message boards, and people have been asking me the difference between state of emergency and martial law. And essentially, in this video, I want to explain, people are wondering, is state of emergency a fancy word for martial law? Well, the quick answer is yes. In fact, in my opinion, I'm a Coca-Cola channel. I would tell you, caffeine-free Coke, that's state of emergency, and regular Coke, that's martial law. Stay tuned for a cool video. Hope you enjoy it. All right, so as we look at Hurricane Milton, let's talk about what happens during a hurricane such as this, right? This is the devastation that's from the prior hurricane, right, that we talked about. But what happens in such a situation? Somebody has to take charge. So obviously it's, just picture a room full of people. No one really knows what to do. Well, in this case, who's going to take charge? The governor. And in our case, Governor DeSantis, who's a really good governor, and I'll tell you why a little bit more later in the video. Someone has to take charge during such a situation. Otherwise, there would be mass confusion. You don't have the time. Things have to be organized. Things have to be mobilized. And so what does that mean? You have to cut through all the red tape of government, of, normal situations that just take such a long, long time because people's lives are in peril. So during a state of emergency, in this case, Governor DeSantis, he can determine things like contraflow on a highway, whether it's going to go two directions, whether you can, take the north and south and make all the roads going south out of a city or out of an area, because this is the kind of devastation you want to avoid. You want to get people out really, really quick. So, okay, so in terms of a governor, right? Governors have very strong powers. Now, governors are not presidents. Only a president can declare martial law. And essentially, though, they're pretty much the same in a sense that with state of emergency, these are really, in technicality, very strong recommendations. In every state of the union, if you don't heed evacuation orders, you can be charged with second-degree misdemeanors. But those cases are rarely enforced because we still live under the Constitution. Now, obviously, if you fail to evacuate, what's going to happen? You're basically putting yourself in peril because emergency services are not going to respond. You're going to be sitting on your rooftop during a flood. You're going to be, God forbid, you have a heart attack. You're going to be sitting there and no one's going to respond for days on end. You're going to have no power. So these are the problems with staying at home. That's why people too tend to evacuate. But the fact remains is that you don't really have to. And this is kind of where it differs from martial law, because martial law is something that's put forward by the President of the United States. And, it's funny, before I talk about that, I thought about a really interesting scenario. Now, if in the last couple of years, we've heard a lot about the word insurrection, and that's basically talking about Trump when he challenged the election. Now, it's kind of strange. If you had a rogue governor out there, and I think this would be a great movie, if you had a rogue governor out there, and that governor was to try to take over at least his state for a while and maybe, create some kind of situation where he would start a civil war or something like that. During a state of emergency, that would be a golden opportunity to do so because the powers are vast. I mean, they can circumvent everything. In the case of DeSantis now, some governors say you can't buy weapons, you can't buy ammunition, but Florida is known as the gunshine state. So DeSantis did quite the opposite. He made sure that you could still buy weapons, still buy ammunition, which is cool because people want to defend their property. I mean, I'm a licensed gun holder, and it's important to be able to defend your family during situations of crisis. Now let's talk about martial law. Martial law is quite different. A lot of people think martial law has never happened in the United States, but they'd be wrong. During World War II in Hawaii, the United States government issued martial law, and it lasted pretty much during the entire war. And the Supreme Court had to step in because there were different legal cases. And the Supreme Court said that, initially martial law was proper for the government to declare that during the early parts of the war, but certainly by 1944, when the war was in hand, it wasn't necessary. So obviously it's a power that can be abused. And so in martial law, obviously only the president can declare martial law. And what are we talking about? We're talking about curfews. We're talking about, controlling of resources like oil and gasoline and medical supplies. It's a scary situation. It also was imposed during the Civil War. So there has been oftentimes situations in America where martial law has been opposed. And of course, people fear that. But again, living under the Constitution the way we do, and it's funny, I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and we were talking about, what if there ever was like a Red Dawn situation where troops invaded from Cuba or something like that. I say Cuba the way President Kennedy said Cuba. I love President Kennedy. I love President Reagan even more. But anyway, the way it works in the United States is that would never really happen because there are so many weapons in the United States. There are so many people holding arms, thankfully, due to the Second Amendment, that we would never have to worry about that. We would conduct like a guerrilla war situation, and we would hold off pretty much anything that happened in our country. Not to say it wouldn't be messy, but sure would be. But so what are the answers now with the hurricane, and what do people have to do, what they can do, what I recommend? Obviously, it's always good to follow the orders and recommendations of a state because they know a lot more than we do. So in the case of the hurricane of Milton, I highly suggest that people leave if they have to. In our case, for this hurricane coming up, Carrie and I are in Zone D, so we don't have to evacuate. We're in like a high area. But for the other folks to stay there is very dangerous. So it's always good more to follow recommendations. But again, thankfully, we're in America and people do have choices. And choices are good. And that's what our fathers and mothers and, fought the wars for and struggle for. That's why we pay our taxes. That's why we fly our flag. That's why we have elections. And it's very, very important. So before I close the video, let's get the actual legal terms from an expert on martial law.
Can a mayor declare martial law? Martial law sounds like a scene straight out of a political thriller, doesn't it? This term brings to mind images of soldiers patrolling the streets, curfews, and suspended civil liberties. But what exactly is martial law, and can a mayor declare it? Martial law refers to the imposition of direct military control of civilian functions during emergencies or in response to crises such as a war or a natural disaster. It involves the suspension of ordinary law and the imposition of military authority. Now, on to the million-dollar question, can a mayor declare martial law? The answer is, generally, no. The power to declare martial law usually rests with the president or a governor of a state. This authority is typically derived from the constitution or statutes of the particular jurisdiction. However, a mayor, as the chief executive officer of a city, does have certain emergency powers. These powers can include declaring a state of emergency, issuing mandatory evacuation orders, and implementing curfews. But these measures are not the same as declaring martial law. So, while a mayor has some emergency powers, declaring martial law is typically beyond their scope of authority. The declaration of martial law is a serious and rare measure that is usually reserved for the highest levels of government.
So many residents of Florida love DeSantis because, for lack of a better word, he's prior military guy, Navy guy, and very pro-weapon. And it's kind of weird, when I first moved to Florida. I mean, it was kind of a novelty buying a weapon because coming from New York, you can't really have anything like that. So, because my friends were into it, so pretty much I got it. I still maintain it to this day. But what's weird about coming to gun stores in Florida is that you could buy, I mean, it's not handguns, it's all kinds of rifles and weapons and different kinds of ammunition, which is, obviously subject for another video. But anyway, it's a very friendly state like Arizona is to that. So here's just some graphics on what DeSantis did, prior to this hurricane, which a lot of people loved. And so with that in mind, all the weapon choices there are in Florida, I mean, do I want to go with this? I don't know. I think could be more fun because there's so many choices. I'm going to go with this. I'm going to go with a phaser. Love Star Trek. So just having a little fun. So folks, I hope you stay safe for the hurricane. Hope this video was an answer to the questions that I've been getting. And please send me more of your questions. I love doing these videos, answering these questions, having a little fun with them. But the main thing is, folks, stay safe out there. Tell your loved ones you love them all the time. It means so, so much. And we'll come out on the other end and we'll have another story to tell. So take care of yourself, and I'll see you soon on the next video. This is Al signing off. And please subscribe, hit the like button. That'd really be cool. All right. And as they say in Star Trek, live long and prosper. Thanks, folks. It's the logical thing to do.